Hosting. I enjoy hosting, like events. And, if there's a movie premiere or something like that, I enjoy hosting. But, what I'm learning is you have to pivot because retail struggled with the pandemic. Everything was closed to where I feel like it was just a good time to just, give it up for now. Before we had it to where you had to go in person, stand in front of either a panel or whoever.
Sitting here with the Materialistic Reviewer, Save Your Black here, and just having a conversation, trying to get some understanding, I guess, trying to learn a little more about this modeling industry that you're into. I know that you're into modeling, you're into acting. What all are you into besides just modeling and acting?
Hosting. I enjoy hosting, like events. And, if there's a movie premiere or something like that, I enjoy hosting. And then, like you said, I do reviews. That's that's bread and butter. And I love doing reviews. I felt like I got into it because I've always purchased a bunch of things. I do a lot of events and reviews for companies already. So I said, why not do it for myself? Especially this year with the pandemic, everyone's home, everybody's online. It's time to capitalize.
I guess that's my next question is kind of how are you doing hosting in this time of COVID?
With that, now that, events have been canceled, for the most part, everything slowed down. So that's pretty much taking a back seat right now.
Okay. So in regards to the modeling and the acting, how does that work out with COVID? Is it all of it taking a back seat within this time, or is it some of it a little more so than others?
A lot of it took a backseat. Like for a few months, it was zero. Like everything was at a standstill. But now I've been getting some callbacks. I've had auditioning. And actually previously, I kind of like it now. Before we had it to where you had to go in person, stand in front of either a panel or whoever. Now we can do it from Zoom or Skype. And I kind of like that because I'm lazy. I don't like to I don't like to deal with traffic. I don't want to be in, the commute. Now I'm like, you just log in and you're speaking to whoever's on the other end. That's nice. Or you do a self taped audition and things like that. But I like the way that it's moved online. Everything's virtual.
Okay. So with it all being virtual,
like even with business, everything is virtual. That's the future.
Yeah, well, I see that it's the future right now as far as everything being virtual and how it is that we're interacting with one another.
Right.
I guess I'm a people person, so I like the interactions in person. Like you're here in person and dealing with people in person. And a lot of what I do now, everything is online.
Really? It's like I'm the introverted extrovert, if that makes any sense.
Well, I'm the extra. I say I'm an introvert, but I like people. And
I guess, like people. I should. I'm like, is there a paycheck behind that? But I'm kidding. I like people in moderation. But I'm liking the movement at first when it was, the talk of, oh, this is going to be the future before the pandemic. It's like, okay, eventually we'll get there. But I really like how we've jumped a few years ahead and everything's virtual now. I kind of like that.
I miss the interaction. If I'm being honest about it. So there's something lost, at least from me, from my perspective. And when you interact with someone and you're not able to interact with them in person, there's a part of our communication that's verbal, like what's going on right now between you and I, but the majority of our communication, there's been study after study that's shown that it's nonverbal in dealing with people. And that interaction, when it gets lost and you boil it down to just the written word or the spoken word, I don't know. And maybe also I'm a kind of a touchy-feely type person. I like hugs. I like dapping people up. And when I interact with people, I'm that type of individual, even though I'm introverted and I don't like getting out a whole lot. But when I do get out and I interact, there's something to be said, or there's that greasing of being able to interact with people that I enjoy.
I do think that you do, in a way, you do lose that, that human connection with people. I can't say that I didn't miss that, getting together just to go out for drinks or just hanging out on some weekends or something. I do in a way did miss that part. But I think because my life was a rat race, once the pandemic slowed everything down, I just enjoy being in the moment. Like that whole just pause. And the pause was actually nice. It helped me to reset,
Right.
get more focused, more organized. Because before I'm just like adding things and I'm kind of going crazy. But now it's giving me a chance to, all right, whew, breathe.
Okay.
And I do feel like the world lost a lot of that. You know, you're just so stuck in a rat race that you forget to appreciate the things right in your face.
I
So
can
I
see that.
definitely started appreciating that. And I'm in Chicago, you know, so it's like I got to get out and actually see the city. It's a beautiful city.
Hmm.
But when you're working all the time, you don't really see that. It's like you just kind of, okay, I'm off this day. Let me go run do this. But when everything was paused for forever like this, it's been like, huh, let me just check it out. Let's see what else is, it's a beautiful city. And also I did miss traveling. Like I'm a travel addict, self-proclaimed. And I miss traveling because it was like, I traveled a lot for work. I traveled for things, for events, and just leisure travel. When all that was at a standstill, I was like, oh, this isn't fun. That part, I was like, I'm bothered. But, other people definitely did not have it as good, I say, as I did. So I can't complain. But I have liked the peace of it all, just about.
The slowing down, I can, that part of it, I definitely agree with. I do enjoy the fact that a lot of it has slowed down, kind of like the stop and smell the
Reset.
roses type deal. At the same time, if they would have told us to stop and smell the roses and we're going to help you out financially, blah,
Oh,
blah, blah,
oh, that would be
that would have
great.
been great. That would have
That's
been like
great.
the best of all worlds, or both
Right.
worlds rather. But the fact that they didn't, it's like you still have the stress of, I still have bills, I still
And
have this, I
bills,
have
yeah,
that.
that's crazy. I do think that this should be somewhat of a wake up call for the majority of the world is have a savings as much as you can. Easier said than done. But it's also you kind of run out of savings after a while because it's like you can have a savings and then after you keep going like, all right, how long are we gonna keep everything at a halt? But then our bills are still running in. We still have lights, water, gas, food. Like that's not gonna stop just because everything else is paused. So I do feel like it would have been nice
Yeah.
to have some sort of backup plan of all right, after we close for a while, we got to get this economy running again.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, or even if if you say you got to get the economy running again, and this I guess gets a little political in my viewpoint on this one, but I look at it and I say, okay, I had a good amount of savings saved up. I had over 6 months of savings that were saved up, and I stretched that out so it was over 8 months before I actually was at a point where I needed some kind of financial assistance,
coming in, yeah.
and found out that because of where I was at, that I wasn't eligible for most of the financial assistance, which brought in a whole world of hurt, especially when you're told that the things that you do, you're not able to do it. You have weddings scheduled for, I say, we shut down all the venues,
God,
no
yeah.
churches, no wedding venues or whatnot. Everything's shut down, so you can't work. Okay, so now you have to figure out how do you pivot to do something else to bring in funds, especially when you're not. Yeah, I say so.
Yeah.
I had, like I said, I stretched 6 months into 8 because trying to figure out how you're gonna do it. But at the same time, it's looking at it and saying, where do you go from here? And like I said, that's where the stress came, at least from me. My perspective is that's where the stress came in, that I didn't have any kind of financial relief. And you're looking at it like, okay, it's great to smell the roses. I need to, at the same time, make
something happening. Yeah.
So, yeah, I say,
Yeah.
so I guess kind of pivoting a little bit, how is it with the modeling specifically? I say, how do you do that with COVID going on right now? I know that you've been published on multiple occasions. I say, how is it getting there to actually do the shoots? Is that any different? Is it better? Is it worse? What's the perspective?
I actually think it's a lot better. I know it's like a lot of it did dry up, and yeah, you have savings. And for me, it's having multiple hustles. But even with that, you can have multiple hustles. But if all of them are affected in some way, if you're in the service industry, if you're in the people business and all that dries up, you're still kind of back at the same situation.
Right.
But for modeling, I think I liked more of it of when you go on sets, instead of it being like crowds of people, it was scheduled to where only you and like your makeup artist or the photographer, it was very small sets to where I do like that. Like even the shoots I've done in between, it's been very very intimate sets. So it's not like you're not around a lot of people. Everyone's, temperature checks, all of that stuff, which in a way, that's just the temperature checks. Not to rub you wrong, but the temperature checks is just a way to make people feel good.
I agree.
Because reality is you cannot have a fever and you're a carrier. You can be asymptomatic and you're still a carrier. So it's kind of like that's just for the sake of doing it.
Well,
But
let's credential what you're stating, because some people might say, like, "Oh, that's misinformation." I say, currently, you're in school and you're studying, and then
yes,
you're also working in addition to the modeling and
right.
everything. So it's not
And
just a
that's what
pretty
I was
face.
right. I was
And I
like,
say
that's
you
what I was
also,
getting to.
yeah. I say so, not just a pretty
Nursing,
face, not just able to model. I say,
No.
but you're also.
Right. And I tell people
I say,
have
but you. I
something
say,
else. I'm
but
I'm
I
a
say,
nursing student as well, nurse tech currently, that I've been in healthcare. And that's I was gonna get to that as well, is yes, I had like the other stuff dried up. And even when you start eating into your savings, but I am very grateful that I had employment in the healthcare facilities to where there was no shortage of needing workers, So where I tell people, if you don't know what you want to do, try something in healthcare because those jobs will never dry up. Like that's always going to be around. You don't have to do a hard job. I mean, the money in that can be easy, depending on where you're like what field, what direction. And then it can be really hard to work with people, especially sick people. But I've been doing that too. And no, not just a pretty face. I'm like, there's some substance here, but but I'm in nursing school as well. And that's been a challenge through like when I first started nursing school, it's supposed to be in person. Everything moved to online. I actually preferred online because I didn't have to pay for parking.
oh
I
wow,
didn't have to
okay,
drive anywhere.
okay.
But it's a lot more challenging to learn nursing online because I'm a visual learner
Mm-hmm.
to where a lot of the things it's like, but I need to see what are we doing? How am I can't just go into a patient's room. I have no clue what I'm going to do. But that's kind of like they have a lot of cool simulations online. But to me, I'm like I learn through my hands, if that makes sense. It's like I need
No,
to touch it, I need to feel it, I need to actually like do it
it makes a
to
lot
where
of
I can
sense.
remember I know how to do this, to where that to me is the challenge of getting through a pandemic in school. I feel so bad for all the students.
But you also work in a
It's
hospital, though,
tough.
right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I say so.
do.
Yeah, I say so. You are getting that ability
Thankfully,
to,
I'm
yeah.
getting that experience, and I'm at a teaching hospital to where they teach you a lot before you're even on the field or getting on the floor. You learn a lot. I am ahead as far as with my class, but I still am a visual learner. It's like
Mm.
some things I didn't know, and I'm like, I really would like to go in person and try this out, but they're still like, we're in the middle of pandemic. We're not doing any schooling right now in person. That changes things quite a bit. I'm like, shit, where's my discount? I'm paying for this and it's the same price in person or online. Like, I thought online was cheaper, but apparently not.
Mm.
But I've been doing both, and it's good, but it's the challenge. Like I feel like I would like to pick and choose which one. But I'm just ready to be finished. Like I encourage everybody who's in school, go for it. For me, I just can't wait to be done. It's stressful, incredibly stressful. And you know
Yeah.
what I mean by that.
Yeah, so
It's a
I'm
lot
very
of
goal oriented.
stress.
I look at the goal. It's like, okay, here's where it's at. This is where I need to get to, and then it's like you move towards that. But at the same time, like I said, I, I'm very much an admirer of individuals that
Mm,
love or are able to do the whole schooling online. Because for me,
true.
if I, as a, especially at my age, if I get into schooling and it's online, all of a sudden I start to lose motivation. I
Oh
start
my
thinking about
God.
everything that's going real world. I could be doing this. I could be doing this.
I
I could
don't
be
think
doing
that's
this. I could be
age.
doing that. And it's like, and every time I
Right.
start thinking about it, I'm like, okay, well, the money. I say, I got this bill, so I could either be studying right now for this,
Or working.
or
Yeah.
I could be working
Paycheck.
on this, and
Yeah.
having in-person schooling, at least for me, being as if I'm going to a institute of higher learning, as they call it, if I'm there, then I can focus on being there. And if I know I need to
Right.
be back on whatever date, then I can focus on it for that. But if it's online, I don't know, for me, it's not tangible. It's not
Really?
real.
But I think that's why I stress myself out because I multitask. I'm always used to like my brain is always at 100. So when I'm in class, I'm doing other things. I'm working on another
Okay.
project. I'm answering emails. I mean, no, you're not supposed to do that, and hopefully my instructors don't see this. But I'm never just like 100% focused to where once we're finished with Zoom or online, I actually have to like study because I don't know what's going on. Like the whole class, they've talked for 8 hours, and I'm like, what happened in class? I don't know. I just am like, I just have to go off the syllabus of what's due at what date because I don't really pay attention. Because my attention span, like I get bored really quickly. So I multitask. So I do like that part of being home because I get to work on other things. In
Right.
person, I'm like, I'm stuck. I actually have to like listen to what's going on.
That's what I like about it. It's like it's the
That's what you like.
it isolates my attention to whatever it is that's in front of me right now. I'm not able to. I know a lot of women are like, oh, just multitask. I'm like, no, I don't do
You're
that.
like one thing at a
Yeah,
time.
I say I'm a computer. I'm an old school computer with a
Oh,
processor that's
there's
in
many
megahertz.
tabs up
Yeah,
here open.
yeah. I, was like,
Like,
I don't have. Well, I always say a computer analogy because I always tell people it's like you don't multitask. You do one thing. A computer. I know a lot of people are like, well, your computer is multitasking. Now with the multiple threads, I guess that would be. But traditionally, it
still
was
one at a time.
yeah, it was one. It would execute one instruction at a time. It's just doing billions of them a second, so it looks like it's
But it's
doing
still
these
one
and then
thing
it's
at a
doing these
time,
and then it's
yeah.
doing these and then it's doing these, and it's how it's allocated towards memory. So for me, I'm like, okay, I don't have that billions of per second. I'm a computer. I'm a processor with megahertz as
You're
opposed
like,
to
"Ooh, slow
gigahertz.
this down."
Yeah, I can only focus on what's in front of me right now in class. This is what I'm going to focus on.
Right.
I'm going to sit there. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to give you my undivided attention for this hour, 2 hours, whatever that class time period is.
Right.
And then after that, I can go deal with something else.
But I'm doing weekends, so it frees up my week to do things. But the workload is heavy to where I feel like I feel like I'm still working in the in the middle of the week. I'm still doing assignments for just the weekend. But I think a lot of your experience online has a lot to do with the instructors. I have 3 different instructors, and they have a very unique teaching method. Like
Mhm.
all of them have their own way of doing things. Some of them we don't like, some of them we do, to where I feel like if you luck out and get a really terrible experience or a bad instructor, it's not going to be a good experience.
I agree with that.
To where it has a lot to do with your instructor.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of things. I say a lot of it has to do with the person that's there that's instructing you or that's teaching you. I've been fortunate that in my time when I was in college that I can honestly say I only had 2 bad instructors or 2 bad professors, 2 bad teachers, however you want to state that, in my entire time there. However,
really good.
well, yeah,
It just depends on how bad, but
well, one of them was so bad that I went and I talked to the chair of the department
that's bad.
prior to dropping the class to say that, hey, this instructor is horrible, which is something I seldomly ever do because normally it's like you start with yourself. What am I
doing wrong?
Yeah, what am I doing wrong? But if you have a situation, and this particular professor was one where, and I guess this one was tenured because every year, if you go back and there's this website, Rate My Professor, you look that professor up, and every year before I had her,
Don't
it was
tell
the
me they're all
exact.
bad.
It was well. Not only was it bad, everybody has a bad experience, great, but the exact same issues that we were having were the exact
Wait,
same
how did
issues
you
they were
end up
having
with this
over
professor?
over 6 to 8 years ago, right? So you're looking at it, it's like, okay, the class starts off with a full contingent, and everybody says they took her only because there was nobody else left to take.
Okay.
They take her by the end of before the drop date, she goes from a full class down to literally 1 or 2 students.
That's terrible.
Everybody else drops. And it wasn't
Oh,
because the
sad.
information was too hard or that nobody else could get it. Because you had some people who actually came out of it. And I don't want to say what it was because then it's like I'm narrowing it down on this particular institution if I state what the institution is. But it was such that,
Don't do that.
yeah, some of them actually went on to have really good careers in this particular field that she was
Wow.
teaching. And they were noted individuals. However, getting taught from this particular individual was something that they were like, you know what? I'll take this class. I'll drop it. I'll take this L and I'll get it someplace else. I can't get it from this individual.
That's really bad.
Yeah. If I tell you the things I guess I could go in depth, but it was one of those things that for me, like I said, I've only had 2. That was one of the worst that I've ever had. But for the most part, I've only had 2 bad instructors in my entire higher learning academic career.
It's really good.
Yeah. So
That's really good. And typically, I don't feel like I've had bad experiences, but I was out of school for like 10 years. took a very long hiatus, but
I did the same thing.
yeah, ooh, really long. And I mean, coming back in, I was like, I'm not gonna know what's going on. But it's just about grind it out, learn as much as you can, and do your work on your own. Because there's some students that are like, oh, but I'm not. They're not telling me this and that. It's like you have to learn it on your own because once you're an adult, they are not gonna hold your hand. They're pretty like brutal. It's like you figure it out, but just make sure you make that payment on time.
Well,
That's how it usually is.
well, when you're in there for higher learning, normally it's because you want to be there.
Right.
And that's one of the things I like about it. It's not like because I went in, I was older. So you said 10 years. For me, it was
It's long.
95 to 2015 was my layoff, right? So from 95 to 2015, I didn't go back to college, the university
That's
until
long.
2015. And, well, I had life in between there and I
A whole
enjoyed
lot
it.
of life. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was great. Did a lot of different things, but it was one of those things you get back into it and you realize, oh, okay, well, here's what I enjoyed the second time around. Granted, I enjoyed the first time around, but the second time was even better. And I know that I enjoy
Really?
learning. Excuse me, I apologize. I know that I enjoy learning, but at the same time, it was that second time around was even better for me.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh. See, I'm on the home stretch and I'm like, part of you're like, oh, I want to continue. And then I'm like, the other part is like, oh, heck no. I can't get to graduation fast enough. I was salty. I'm supposed to be finishing in June. And now they just let us know, oh, we've extended it 2 more months due to the pandemic. What? We've been online. What do you mean due to the pandemic? But we lost like several instructors. Not lost like
I
to the
know, I get you.
pandemic,
Okay,
but
I got you.
a lot of them were like, I'm not doing online. A lot of hours they were
Right.
just weren't able to keep any. So we had to wait for an instructor to come in. And it's just been like 2 months. Do you guys not know how long that feels? We were looking at the finish line right here. And then
It's
you
like, oh, we
slide
were
it
right
back.
there. You moved the goalpost.
I'm
How you gonna
salty.
do that?
Yeah, I'm like, oh God, I need like get me out of this, please. Definitely it's getting my prayer life together, but I don't know about anything else. But whew.
Yeah.
It's a stretch. Like nursing school, and they say it's hard. It's a different level of hard. For me, it's like it's like nothing I've done before. And they ask like the dumbest questions. Like, oh my God, it's a challenge. It definitely makes you think outside of your little box, but I'm ready to be finished with it. I enjoy what I do as far as like work in the hospital. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy when people come in. A lot of times people, especially in the pandemic, I felt so bad for them. They have nobody. You can't bring visitors. You can't. So
Right.
it's really hard. It's like I can imagine being so sick or in a situation to where I can't even have my closest someone in there, anybody in there with me. You just see people all in like all this PPE. You don't know who they are. I mean, typically you're like, I don't even know who I'm looking at. Like it's a really, to me, it's just so sad and just so disconnected. It's like people typically they're spending so many hours out of the time by themselves in a room. Like it's really sad, heartbreaking. But I cannot wait to get through this. I'm ready for this part to be over with. And if anybody is in either entertainment or modeling, I would say have a backup plan because you never know when something, especially like this, can happen with the
Right.
pandemic. It's just like have that backup plan because you'll be happy you did.
It's one of those few things that you know for sure, like you said, that are definitely going to be around.
It's going to be around forever.
People are always getting sick. People are always dying. So if you're in those two things, and people are always eating, those are like things that are always.
That's a given.
Yeah, if you're in those, if you're in one of those three fields, then you're guaranteed forever that people are going to need those services.
And the money is great, especially right now. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. I know, totally different topic for another day, but the money, it's really good. But I'm trying to figure out how are they going to go back to what the pay is from, before. It's like, how do you get everybody signed up or, hey, well, please come work for us. You give all these bonuses. You can't really just start taking that back. Like I don't see people sticking around for less pay. And I get it. It's like, all right, it's like hazard pay or it's very, like they say, unprecedented times. But I don't see how they're going to slide all the way back down to where they started before the pandemic. I don't see that happening. I'm like, they're going to have to leave that high pay up. They're going to have to do that.
That's one of those things. It's like, well, how do you get back to it? And it's like, we're just going to do it. And I'm like,
that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be tough.
That for me is like, I guess we can have that conversation about the economics of it later. But it's like say, I've always had a different viewpoint on economics as far as how the country and how we do economics versus how I think it should be done. And this kind of highlighted it for me in a way that I looked at. I'm like, yeah, this definitely needs to change. This needs to be. We need to go 180 degrees on this because it makes no sense right now. The way it's working, it makes no sense. And there's some things like that we talked about offline or before this that for me, I look at, I'm like,
Yeah, like, let's say the biggest lesson and the word that's always in my mind is pivot. That's
mhm,
through this pandemic, it's like, oh, I'm always like pivot. Because previous, like at the top of the pandemic, I ended up closing my business.
mhm.
That yes, I was a business owner too.
Because you got
And
multiple sticks in that fire. Hey,
yeah, so I closed my retail location, and I didn't want to at first, but it's just my, what I'm learning is you have to pivot because retail struggled with the pandemic. Everything was closed to where I feel like it was just a good time to just give it up for now. Definitely going to get back into it.
okay.
But it's been a lot. I feel bad for people who've had it a lot worse. I feel like I can't complain because my situation has not been as bad as a lot of other people. They say someone's always had it worse.
Well, out of curiosity, if they want to see your work or be able to catch up with you, where can they do it? What's your social media? What's all your handles? What's your website? All that stuff.
Oh, many.
Yeah, give it to.
The Materialistic Review would be on YouTube, Instagram, and the website. And also, my handle is at Nolabae. That's Nolabae. And that's Instagram. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
And we'll put it all down there in the description. So yeah. But yeah, it's good talking to you. And we definitely got to do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.